Hi, I am Morten Solvik, Vice President of Mahler Foundation and the host and executive producer of the Mahler Hour, where we bring you the personalities, places, and projects happening right now in the Mahler community around the world. Welcome. Thanks to all who participated in our last Mahler Hour entitled Ibero-America, where Francisco Brizio gave us a detailed introduction to the Sociedad Mahler Mexico, its history since its founding in 1960, a tour of a private Mahler museum, and a wonderful film and greeting from the music school for children that they support in Irapuato. Francisco is the president of the Sociedad, which now also includes the Mahler Society of Spain. We also had a chance to meet the honorary president of the Sociedad Mahler, Enrique Dimeke, conductor and artistic general director of the Teatro Colón in Buenos Aires. And in our final segment, we spoke with Alejandra Urrutia, whose concert for Brotherhood a year ago presented Mahler's Second Symphony at a moment of great change in her native country of Chile. You can see this entire show and all past Mahler Hours on our website. This installment of the Mahler Hour will be dedicated to Mahler in the public eye, where we will look at 3 institutions in 3 different countries that reflect how Mahler is presented and perceived by the broader public. We will start with Albrecht Schultze and Ingeborg Steifenson of the Gustav Mahler Vereinigung in Hamburg, who will provide us with a profile of their society, its history and activities, and then take us on a tour of a Mahler museum that they helped to create in Hamburg. Next, I will talk to Alexander Meraviglia-Crivelli, artistic and general director of the Gustav Mahler Youth Orchestra, based in Vienna, Austria, whose concerts and tours around the world have brought much deserved attention to this ensemble of young, talented musicians. My final guest is Dame Eveline Nikkels, who was recently knighted by the Dutch royal family for her work in promoting Mahler in the Netherlands and elsewhere. Mahler and public institutions, all this in the coming hour. Before we begin, let me remind everyone attending live to post any questions you might have for any of the guests to the comments section. We will get to these at the end of our show. Don't forget to include your name or at least the city and country you are writing from. Also, the Mahler Hour is brought to you by Mahler Foundation, so if you want to support our activities, please become a member. Just go to our website at mahlerfoundation.org for all of the details. You can also direct any questions or requests that you might have to info@mahlerfoundation.org. In our continuing series of profiles of Mahler societies around the world, today we are going to take a look at the Gustav Mahler Vereinigung in Hamburg, Germany. Here to speak with us about the organization are board members Ingeborg Steifenson and Albrecht Schultze. Welcome, Ingeborg and Albrecht. We're now taking the journey to Hamburg. Here we go. Hello, Albrecht.
Welcome.
Tell us about the Gustav Mahler Vereinigung. When was it founded?
The Gustav Mahler Vereinigung was founded by the music critic journalist Georg Borchardt in 1988. The first president and today honorary president is our friend, the famous musicologist Konstantin Floros. I think everyone knows him. A real humanist and a specialist of Mahler and other musicology subjects as well. He was, and I can say, he still is the most important driving force of our society in the background.
Maybe we should briefly describe Mahler's relationship to your city of Hamburg.
Mahler was the erste Kapellmeister in the Stadttheater Hamburg, the former name and the former building of the present-day State Opera, whose musical director today is Kent Nagano. And at that time, also the Stadttheater Altona, which was destroyed. He worked there for 6 years with incredible energy, a very important stepping stone for Mahler's career.
What are the society's aims and who are its members?
To promote Mahler's music, especially by young artists, young musicians, singers especially, to present seminars and to present book presentations, to publish a newsletter regularly. And we have our own scientific paper or a series of books named Mahler Studies. But everything grows in our society only step by step. There's no master plan for years. And to emphasize Hamburg, Hamburg is an important Mahler city.
And so your membership is from mostly in Hamburg, also in Germany?
Yes, we have today 170 members. In our best years, we have 300. But there are people not only from Hamburg, from the majority in Hamburg, of course, but Germany as well. Music interested people, musicians, cultural enthusiasts, others, also students, and a few pupils also.
So what are some of the significant moments in the history of the organization? You've been around for quite a while.
Yes, I want to stress out 3 points. First, the Mahler Fest. It was 1989 under the patronage of Maestro Gerd Albrecht. He died 2014. And the composer and conductor Peter Ruzicka, a member of our society. This was a great boost in the beginning of our society. Second, the Mahler Rose Baptism on the 24th of October 2010 with Marina Mahler as patron and Simon Young conducting the Second Symphony of Gustav Mahler in Leishalle with Mahler's orchestra, a great symbolic act that relates to our own logo, the red rose you see already. The third point was the celebration of 25 years Gustav Mahler Vereinigung in December 2013 with concert recital of mezzo-soprano Michaela Schuster at the University of Theatre and Music in Hamburg, and our special guest Helen Donat, a famous singer of the former Mahler area. Other important guests, we have 2015 Redi Grist, a soprano. She worked together with Leonard Bernstein and Igor Stravinsky. She did the first performance in the world of the Rossignol of Stravinsky. And last but not least, Christian Thielemann. He became the honorary member. This was a great honor for us.
Tell us who is leading the society today?
Today we have the president. It's the same person who is president of the University of Music and Theatre in Hamburg, Elmar Lampson. He's also a composer. And our vice president, Ingeborg Steifensand. And we have a wonderful woman for our homepage and financial matters, Gabriele Bastians. And we have a scholarly head and editor of our Mahler studies, Alexander Odefey. And we have a legal expert, Wolfgang Kortz, and me. I am a cardiologist, but I'm the treasurer of the society, and I have a lot of contacts to young musicians.
And you've mentioned a few activities. What have you done most recently?
Yeah, our current activities are scholarly symposium dedicated to Konstantin Froros about Gustav Mahler and his contemporaries, with papers in our next publication of Mahler studies by Peter Lang Verlag, the publisher. And we have every 2 years, in this year in May, I hope, not disturbed by Corona, the Gustav Mahler Lied Contest in connect with the University of Music and the Rochner Stiftung. And we also starting a very heavy film project about the relationship between Mahler and Hamburg with our highly skilled young filmmaker Johannes Schmidt. You see films of his work in some minutes.
Okay, well, that's quite a long list of things you're doing. Of course, one of the biggest recent accomplishments of the Vereinigung was the establishment of a Mahler Museum in Hamburg in 2018. I understand your Mahler Society played a leading role in bringing about this museum.
Yes, in a way, the Gustav Mahler Vereinigung has been working since 1988 to create a Mahler Museum in Hamburg. This was one of the central ideas, or rather dreams, of our founding fathers. For the beginning, only in our thoughts. Then the matter turned real in 2000 when Franz Willnauer, you know him very well,
yes,
was the first to discuss the project, a memorial place for Gustav Mahler in Hamburg, with students in theory, students of his cultural management seminar. When we saw the chance of being part of a museum complex about composers associated with Hamburg, the Mahler Society dedicated 4 years of intensive work with our own museum task force and a lot of several specialists, Helmut Brenner, Hubert Stuppner, Konstantin Floros, Alexander Odefey, Franz Willnauer, and so on and so on. And this was necessary to put together the complex data, content of the museum to, in a modern way of showing things in a museum.
As I understand it, the Mahler Museum is part of a larger complex of museums. There's a collection of them called the Composers Quarter. Tell us a little bit about how that all fits together.
Yes, the Composers Quarter is a project of several societies, and we want to memorize some important composers who were born or who lived and worked in Hamburg. We put together Georg Philipp Telemann. He worked here for 40 years, 1681 to 1767, his birth dates and his death. And his godson, Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, the famous son of Johann Sebastian Bach, in those times much more famous than his father in Leipzig. And Johann Adolf Hasse. People from Dresden say our Hasse, because he lived and worked there, but he was born near Hamburg in Bergedorf. It is a small town near Hamburg, very near. And Fanny and Felix Mendelssohn, both born near the church called Michel, the main church in Hamburg, and Johannes Brahms, of course, he's the biggest music son of the city of Hamburg, and Gustav Mahler.
So you have put together a film about this. We've edited the film, but let's see a selection of the film that you have dedicated to the museum.
Greetings to all friends of Gustav Mahler. From Hamburg, Germany, we would like to send this message all over the world. Hamburg is a major city for classical music. Elbphilharmonie, Hamburg State's Opera, Leishalle. Well-known musicians and significant composers have lived and worked here. As of May 2018, the Composers Quarter, Komponistenquartier, now contains exhibition rooms for Georg Philipp Telemann, Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, Johann Adolf Hasse, Fanny und Felix Mendelssohn, Johannes Brahms, and Gustav Mahler. Maestro Kent Nagano is the patron of our Komponistenquartier. Gustav Mahler is a pioneer of modernity in classical music. He was one of the most energetic artists ever, always searching, always adapting in his endeavors. He was very well read and well versed in the philosophical discourse of his time. Metaphysics and spirituality were his subjects, as well as the meaning of life and the question of death and how to overcome it. Already at the age of 30, the idea of salvation moved him existentially. Driven by incredible energy, he became director of the Budapest Court Opera in Hungary at the age of 28, already having become well known across Europe and even internationally after various exemplary performances of Mozart and Wagner operas, as well as modern repertoire at that time. The Hamburg Opera principal, Bernhard Polini, formerly named Baruch Pohl, a peerless talent scout, brought Mahler from Budapest to Hamburg. The then unmarried Mahler was a restless conductor at the Hamburg State Theatre in Dammtorstraße, 1891 to 1897, between the ages of 30 and 36. Later, his sisters Justine and Emma moved in with him in Hamburg because both parents had died in 1889. He also often worked with outstanding singers. One was a secret love affair, Anna von Mildenburg. Mahler was a physically fit and weary person who loved hiking in the mountains and swimming, and was quick on his feet. He loved technical innovations. This was illustrated by his interest in the then emergent trend of cycling and his eventual purchase of a bicycle, which was not exactly cheap in Hamburg in those days. Mahler therefore became one of the first cyclists to ride around Hamburg's cityscape. An original English bicycle from 1895 is on display in the museum, resembling the one Mahler owned. Posters from that time on the recently invented Litfass columns advertised various events from art performances to unabashed cycling practice, even for women. Our short animated introductory film gives a witty overview of Gustav Mahler's personality and his time in Hamburg. The beautiful original Hamburg city map from 1892 allows us to visualize and localize the often changing locations where Mahler lived, worked, and spent his free time, including his bicycle outings. Very interesting details about the locations can be found in the touchpad. Mahler and his bicycle, Mahler's fellows, colleagues, Mahler's private places, Mahler's workplaces. A relaxing bench built with touchpads offers the opportunity to meet all of Mahler's significant contemporaries in his Hamburg. You can even listen to 3 of his talented singers in historical recordings on the first touchpad. On the second, you will find Mahler's ensemble of singers in Hamburg and Vienna with a short description of them and some historical recordings as well. The book corner invites our guests to explore Mahler's broad intellectual horizon. The historical edition of several books, a present from Eveline Nikkels from the Gustav Mahler Stichting Nederland, is presented in this corner, together with an album about Mahler and the Leishalle in 1908. Mahler went about obtaining the most important post in the music world in a strategic manner. In order to work as a Jew, he would have to convert to Christianity. He was thus baptized as a Catholic in Hamburg. But on the other hand, it was not only for career purposes. The original baptismal book is on display here in the museum.
That's a wonderful film, Albrecht. It's a wonderful introduction, and I think it gives everyone a great deal of curiosity about coming and experiencing the place. There's one other item, of course, that's part of all of this that I'd like to talk about a little bit more, and it's a true rarity. The only known recording of Mahler performing music, or at least a mechanical reproduction of it. And here to tell us more about this player piano and the Welt Mignon role that Mahler made in 1905 is Ingeborg Steifenson. Welcome, Ingeborg.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Morten, and Happy New Year to all.
Tell us about this instrument.
Yes, this very rare instrument is a Welte Steinway instrument from 1924. Our member and sponsor Manfred Schäfer enabled us to get this old and restored instrument for the museum. You can play the piano quite normal, like Matthias did in the film about the museum. But there is a special welted mechanism which enables the instrument to play by itself, in the manner of pianists of the past. Recorded on special rolls with a kind of punched card machine, you can listen to Mahler playing Mahler. The wonderful soprano Christiane Karg sang a recording of Das himmlische Leben accompanied by Gustav Mahler. See our homepage. Now the roll is in our museum. The family live from Switzerland heard practicing the instrument acquisition and gave us an original Mahler roll, Das himmlische Leben, from 1905. As a gift for our museum, a real noble gesture. Many thanks.
Indeed, and quite a privilege. I think we have a short film about this too, so you can actually experience what this is like. Let's have a look at that.
Neben mir steht zum einen Herr Marc Wieduch. Herr Marc Wieduch ist Inhaber der Firma Wieduch Klavierhandel, ein weltweit berühmter Händler von Reproduktionsklavieren. Und daneben Herr Daniel Heil, gelernter Orgelbauer und Restaurator, auch dieses seltenen Instruments, was nun heute hier eingezogen ist. Meine Frage an Sie, lieber Herr Wieduch, was ist das Besondere an dem Instrument und woher kommt es?
Also das Besonderste an diesem Instrument ist, denke ich, dass es die Kombination von 2 besten Welten ist. Steinway war damals schon, Steinway & Sons, die Marke, bis heute geblieben, und Welt Mignon, der Erfinder dieses Systems, war die beste Marke in dem Reproduktionsbereich und die Kombination ist so das Wertvollste, was es damals und auch heute gegeben hat. Besonders ist es, weil es nur sehr wenige von diesem Instrumententyp gab. Es wurden ungefähr 650 von diesen Klavieren damals gebaut und heute erhalten, geschätzt sind nur noch um die 50. Das heißt, das, was hier steht und vor allem auch in diesem Zustand, wie es hier steht, ist weltweit eine Rarität. Und die Qualität der Wiedergabe, wenn wir dann auch Mahler darauf hören, die reicht so nah es geht an das Original. Also es ist vielfältig, besonders aus ganz unterschiedlichen Gründen. Es ist ein bisschen nach Hause gekommen, weil es in Hamburg ja gebaut wurde, hier im Werk bei Steinway, um dann nach Freiburg zu reisen und die Wäldetechnik zu bekommen und von dort aus dann damals in den ersten Besitz, 1924. Also von daher mehrere Gründe, warum es besonders ist.
Schön. Ja, und was hat denn das Instrument jetzt mit Gustav Mahler zu tun?
Also wir können uns das heute wahrscheinlich schwer vorstellen. In 1904, als diese Technik entwickelt wurde, war das wie ein Weltwunder. Das war das erste Mal, dass es möglich war, dass ein Pianist sein eigenes Spiel aufnehmen konnte. So gesehen gab es beide Interessen. Der Hersteller wollte gerne die verschiedenen Pianisten aufnehmen, um sie bewerben zu können, aber die Pianisten wollten auch gerne ihr eigenes Spiel aufnehmen, um es zu erhalten. Und Gustav Mahler war ja auch ein ausgezeichneter Pianist. Es ist nicht überliefert, ob er oder ob die Firma Welte den Antrag gemacht haben, aber sie sind zumindest zusammengekommen im November 1905 und haben 4 Rollen aufgenommen, die Gustav Mahler selber eingespielt hat auf dem Welte Mignon und dann auch die fertige Rolle angehört hat und dann mit seiner Unterschrift auch bestätigt hat, dass er sagt, das ist das, wie ich es wollte und wie ich es gespielt habe. Das heißt, das ist die einzige erhaltene Dokumentation seines originalen Klavierspiels, die wir hier hören können. Durch Zufall sind wir auf diese eine Rolle gestoßen und die Familie, die selber Besitzer eines Welte Mignon ist, die haben, als sie hörten, wofür es ist, gesagt, wir schenken diese Rolle dem Museum und die habe ich Ihnen heute auch mitgebracht, wunderbar erhalten, über 100 Jahre alt, mit dem Originalspiel von Gustav Mahler.
Quite remarkable to hear Mahler playing in any form, haunting that instrument, as it were, and knowing that the mechanical reproduction really reflects, even though it's not an audio recording, how he pushed those keys and made that sound. It must be quite wonderful to stand there next to it and listen to that, Ingeborg.
Yes, it's really, and the visitors are amazed, and yes, it's very fine to have this instrument now, and it looks good now, and it's yes, it's fine.
You know, this is a tremendous project, and with all of the things that you've put into it, and over all the time that you've developed this, I can imagine that it's not just, of course, of benefit to your society and even just to Mahler lovers, but to the city of Hamburg. Tell us a little bit, was the government involved in any of the planning or financing or marketing of the museum?
No, not at all. It's too small. The project is too small in relationship to other projects in Hamburg. But we did it completely without the help of planning of the government. There was money from Hamburg foundations, merchants, and private people. Trips to collection objects were paid for privately. So Albert and me, we traveled to New York, we traveled to Paris, we traveled to Vienna to get all this together. Only today, there's a small support from Government Agency of Culture for expenses for the everyday business of the museum complex Composers Quarter.
I see. So did they?
Yes.
Did the city purchase the buildings, or were they owned by the city? And
No, No, not the buildings. It's the buildings are belonging to a foundation, and no, for the daily works in the Componisten Quarter. For people.
I see. And what about advertising and tourism? Do they take it up in their selling this to tourists coming to Hamburg?
Yes, that will done. Yes, but you have to work at it. Nothing goes itself.
No, of course.
Yes.
Of course. And the website, is that also taken care of by the city or by
No, nothing by the city, but so you can do and tell what you want, yes, but it's nothing by the city, not at all, anything.
So you work with the other foundations, the CPE Bach and the Mendelssohn and the other museums to put together a something that works in coordination with one another.
Yes, we work together, but behind this is the Karl Töpfer Stiftung. They have the houses, and yes, the museum is placed in.
And this is a private foundation?
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's still a very public face, isn't it, to Mahler and all of these composers, and it seems a wonderful project. What relationship does Mahler have to Hamburg today?
Yes, we heard already from Albrecht. Gustav Mahler lived and worked 6 years in Hamburg, and 4 decades. Nobody took notice of this. Yet he was one of the most famous conductors in our city. With very slow steps involved from Georg Borchardt, the city of Hamburg now sees what it means to feature this important genius. But very small steps. A square or place near the State Opera and a park near the Dammtor railway station are named after Gustav Mahler today in Hamburg. Busts and reliefs mark prominent location. Mm-hmm. So he is a part of the city.
The cityscape, yeah.
Yes.
Of course, now we have COVID. I imagine that's made it difficult with the exhibit and the museum.
Yes, the museum is closed. Yes, it's closed, and we don't know when it will open again. But we know the public interest in our museum is outside of pandemic times great. A lot of international music lovers and musicians from all over the world visit our museum. And we are not at all at the end. A guest book is the best proof. For example, I look back to the nice visit of the San Francisco Symphony Youth Orchestra, the biggest group of visitors ever, and also members of the famous Philadelphia Symphony Orchestra in 2019. They both gave concerts at Elbphilharmonie in concert hall. At all, the musicians who perform in the Elbphilharmonie and stay in Hamburg overnight are a target group that has not yet been consistently exhausted. I remember the kind visit of Maestro Thomas Hampson, ambassador of our Mahler Museum, Maestro Christian Thielemann, honorary member of our association, and Maestro Markus Stenz. Perhaps anybody is there from Japan in our group now, I don't know. At a glance to Japan, also the recipient of the Nobel Prize in Medicine, Professor Tazuku Onyo, was here. He wished an extraordinary guided tour. Yes, that's what I remember.
Well, it's wonderful. I'm glad you're attracting prominent people and also just tourists who are drawn in perhaps by accident or come on purpose to experience more of Mahler. It's wonderful hearing about all that you've been doing. So thank you both for being our guests. Good luck with the project. I am certain that the site is the envy of many a Mahler society around the world that don't have a place like this to commemorate and celebrate the composer as you do. So congratulations.
Yes, Morten, thank you very much to have the possibility to present our work here so prominently at the beginning of 2021. It's a great moment, and thank you so much for the impressive management, Francisco and Angela, also, of this important and well done networking Mahler Hour. And at the end, I would say it's a great pleasure for us to invite you all, when the pandemic is under control, to come and visit us in Hamburg. You have to ring us. We will have a highlight tour through the exhibition, and then a nice coffee and wonderful cake in the charming museum coffee. Klein, please.
That sounds wonderful. I think when the pandemic is over, I wouldn't mind just taking a year and going.
Yes.
So many wonderful things to see and friends to visit again, and new friends, because this has been a real opportunity to gather the Mahler community. So thank you and congratulations.
Yes.
A pleasure.
Greetings to Marina Mahler.
Yes, indeed. Okay, thank you. So now we take you to a famous performing ensemble that bears the name of Mahler, the Gustav Mahler Youth Orchestra, and its artistic and general manager, Alexander Meraviglia-Crivelli. Now we are arriving by satellite to Vienna. Welcome, Alexander.
Thank you. Hi, Morten. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon from Vienna.
You have been leading the Gustav Mahler Youth Orchestra now for about 25 years. What is your background and how did you get involved with this organization?
Look, I studied some sort of arts management near the Austrian border in a small town called Passau, which was very advantageous because I could spend most of the time in Vienna. And this was exactly during the tenure of Claudio Abbado as music director of the Vienna State Opera, or general music director of the city of Vienna. And to be very honest, I studied quite long because I enjoyed Vienna a lot and spent much more time there than at my studying place. And when I then, after having completed the studies, started to apply for various institutes to Mahler even, I was basically addressed and asked, the Mahler Orchestra is looking for a new manager, would I be interested? And I was falling backwards. Of course, I had interviews with the then CEO of the Vienna Musikverein, with the late Hans Landesmann, famous former music director of the Salzburg Festival, and then with Abbado himself. And strangely and luckily, they took me and they still got me. So this was, it was by mere coincidence, but of course a very happy one for me.
Yes, indeed. It sounds like you both benefited enormously from that encounter. As you intimated, that the orchestra was the inspired brainchild of Claudio Abbado. Tell us a little bit about how this organization was founded.
Yeah, you know, Abbado was, as I said, music director of the Vienna State Opera, which is technically also the Vienna Phil, even though those are different institutions, between 1986 and 91. So in that time, he was the conductor spending most time with this fantastic orchestra. And of course, he sensed, he did so before already. He was, I think, leading the orchestra the first time in the 1960s. But having, let's say, taken over this position, which was Mahler's himself, he realized not only the incredible rich heritage of the house, but also of the orchestra and the European treasure, which needs to be, you know, safeguarded, but also renewed. And of course, there are many links to even the Mahler family with Auer, as we know, and Rosé. But the Central Eastern European, let's say, tradition, especially in string playing, was still mirrored in the Vienna Philharmonic of the 1980s and 1990s. Abbado said, these musicians I'm playing with and performing with every day, these are the students and grand students of the great musicians from today's Ukraine, from today's Soviet Union. But people from these countries, students from these countries, could not join us and make music together. Musically and historically, we belonged together, but there was no bridge at the time. So he thought, and of course he had some, actually quite a lot of experience with young musicians, having co-founded the European Community Youth Orchestra. He said there should be a way of uniting musicians. We're talking about 86, Iron Curtain, from beyond the Iron Curtain. And so he did. Everybody apparently said this is not going to work, it's not possible, but he if there was one Maxime, as we say in German, in Abadus Live, it was a no is not being taken by him. So people around him, I was told, had to do everything in order to make it work, and they did so. So founded in '86, there was a very first tour in 1987, where the orchestra First Symphony to Vienna Musikverein, to Ljubljana, to Budapest, to Graz, to Prague, and to other places. And when you hear the places, you also see the link, of course, to Gustav Mahler. And if I may anticipate a potential question, so why are we called Mahler? Now that you know a little bit about the history, of course, Mahler as a Kapellmeister has been ever present in these, at that time, different countries, but at his time, common background. So Abado told me himself that he regarded Gustav Mahler as the best, both music, but also humanistic example of overcoming borders which existed at that time.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a wonderful story, and it plugs so I think prophetically into what Mahler has come to represent today. The notion of diversity and bringing together various cultures. He lived that life. He was that person with so many identities, yes. And managed to create these incredible pieces. In a sense, also from that awareness. So you're still, in a sense, a touring orchestra, right? I mean, what does a typical year look like for the Juventu Orchestra?
Well, hoping that a typical year returns quickly, because as you can imagine, like any arts institution, but especially a touring orchestra, is heavily affected. Now, we are a project or touring orchestra. We are based in Vienna. So I have no orchestra at the moment because it is a project orchestra. Mm-hmm. Musicians come from all over Europe. We have no limitations to the European Union or else. It is all over Europe. And we're recruiting from all over Europe. So any European nationality can apply. Now, the normal, so to say, GMJO year consists of 3, say, periods. The first period is in the year before, in late autumn, when we do our auditions. Mm-hmm. Normally, this takes place between October and Christmas. Mm-hmm. We hear musicians in more than 25 European countries. Normally about 2,500 students apply. And we are traveling with a prominent jury of professional orchestra musicians, our assistant conductor. We travel to many cities throughout Europe, as I said, 25 countries. And after this very intense process, of these 2,500 applicants, about 350 are distilled to be the potential musicians of the following year. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, we don't perform with 350, obviously, and we don't do Mahler 8 every year. So out of these 300 potential musicians, we, in the process over a couple of weeks, we try to put together the orchestra, which then performs in 2 tours the following year. One in spring, let's call it Easter, sometimes it's around Easter. The last 2 years, it was rather later, and one in summer. Mm-hmm. Of the year. And of course, you may ask, that is not very much, but still, it's 25 concerts. It's 2 major tours, and we have to remember one thing. We try to be an additional offer to music students. We try not to compete with professional symphonic orchestras, and that's why we are trying to limit our activities or focus our activities to the springtime, normally during university holidays, and summer also during the holidays. Still, there's quite a lot of competition, also with professional orchestra academies. They all want to have our students, but once they have them, they don't want to give them back to us. So it's very interesting. And those 3 periods which we organize over a year are more than a full-time job. People wouldn't think so, but it's a bit like when you're working at the Salzburg Festival, people tend to ask you, what are you doing the other 11 months? Right. And I can tell you, with the Mahler Orchestra, it's quite the same.
I certainly believe that. Well, I have two questions based on what you just said. One is there might be young musicians listening. How can they apply? Where do they, is there a website? Is anybody that they contact? Tell us a little bit, just quickly, what they might do who might be interested in joining.
Yes, of course, there is a website, obviously. There's even an auditions website. Unfortunately, for this coming season, hopefully the auditions, because we already had quite a lot of qualified musicians for 2020 who most of them couldn't participate. So we internally decided that those who won the auditions the previous year should rather join us also for the following year.
Yeah.
But the procedure is very simple. You can apply through the GMGO website. Normally at late summer, we send out the information, we inform on Facebook, and the, as we call it in German, the mouth propaganda is very strong. So we get a lot of applications, and we try, as long as this is possible, really to take everybody who applies in time. But in some places there has to be a short list because it's hundreds applying for one place.
Well, the result speaks for itself. I mean, you said you don't compete with professional orchestras, but in fact, you do. You were on the program of the Amsterdam Mahler Festival that didn't take place last year, and other locations that are very eager to have you come. So it speaks very much for the quality of the students who are part of that organization, and that you managed to find, as you rightly say. I think it's a wonderful opportunity, obviously, for budding professionals, but you have also talked about COVID indirectly. So let's hear a little bit about that. How are you doing this year, and how will you get out of it, so to speak? Is there a prospect for continuation?
Well, I hope there's a prospect. Of course there is. We have to be optimistic in our field. Let me put it this way. Year 2020, and just to give you a couple of examples, the last thing we did just prior to the first lockdown here in Europe, a week before, was doing joint concerts with our partner orchestra, the Staatskapelle Dresden, with Christian Thielemann performing Gurre-Lieder, so the biggest, together with Mahler 8, imaginable project you could do. We could still do that. So 3 concerts in Dresden with that. The following concert at the Salzburg Easter Festival were already cancelled. In May, as you just mentioned, Morten, May 2020, we were supposed to go on tour, not only to Amsterdam to the prestigious Mahler Festival, but also to go on tour to Hamburg, to Cologne, Luxembourg, and other places with Mahler 8. And this fell apart. And as you can imagine, the impact of such a project falling apart with rather short notice is heavy. But we managed with a lot of help and also with good spirits and some luck to, let's say, to survive the cancellation, all the advanced costs and payments we had done. And then the summer tour was also partly cancelled because of the COVID regulations. But together with a couple of partners and presenters that we're very closely working with, we managed to put up, let's say, revised summer project with a lot of, say, indirectly Mahler-related repertoire, smaller scale, Schoenberg orchestrations, Webern orchestrations. We did, for example, the Noke and our very talented Austrian conductor, Tobias Wöger. And we managed to have some sort of a summer project, which was very important psychologically for the musicians, which was important also for us to justify the moral and also financial support we got from the Austrian government and from our main sponsors.
Also,
and last but not least,
I'm sorry, I'm very sorry, Alexander. Tell us a little bit about the state support you're getting. I mean, you and I spoke earlier about this, and I know this from living in Vienna, that the government, despite the performing arts being in a deep crisis, the government here has really tried as best it can to be supportive and literally financially supportive, not just morally supportive of organizations. So they have been helping the orchestra as well.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, one has to say 2 things. The first thing is the Austrian government and also the government of Vienna, the city of Vienna, our main public subsidies, have been proactively trying to support us the moment the crisis started. Mm-hmm. And we are reporting to them more or less every 2 months what the situation is. Now, They have even anticipated, for example, the application for the multi-year or 3 years contract, subsidy contract, just to give an example. And recently in September, they set up a non-profit organization fund, which also, helped for arts institutions to apply for structural help. Being a slim organization, we are just 4 people working in the management, we can cope with the enormous impact. Also, thanks, I have to repeat that, to the ongoing support from our donors and sponsors, which is very important, and I think that after a crisis of that kind, the role and importance of individual donors and sponsors will be even more important, because we do not know what the public funding situation will be in 2 or 3 years after the billions that had to be invested now. There will be a lot of, companies that will be hesitant to invest into the arts. So it's a lot about private money. And of course, I abuse our talk now also to, invite everybody to help the GMJ in the future. But let me say one thing, please, Morten, because this is the main point. The basic message is we shall survive this. And this is already a lot that we can say in a situation like this and like that. And we can be quite sure that we will survive not only this year, but also the following years, because we're stable and, let's say, we are diligently maneuvering. But the main concern is, are we going to be able to do what is our vision, what is our Bardo's vision, what we want to realize? And this is bringing together people from different countries under the guidance of, the best conductors and soloists and professional tutors, and go with them on tour internationally. And this is en d'être, but this is the big question mark. And, there's hardly any, say, arts institution form which is more vulnerable to the effects of the pandemic than an internationally composed touring orchestra. By definition, this is the worst thing you can be. So we have to be very optimistic, but we also have to radiate this optimism to our students. This is the key.
This was an opportunity to do that. I thank you very much for coming and talking to us about your wonderful.
Thank you.
It's been my pleasure to hear you hear that orchestra perform numerous times, and it's always been a great pleasure. So all good luck to you, Alexander, in the future. Thanks for being our guest.
Thank you very much, Morten, and thanks to all of you. Thank you.
Next, we turn to a wonderful public acknowledgement of the importance of Mahler to society by introducing you to Eveline Nikkels, or should I say Dame Eveline, from the Mahler Stichting in the Netherlands. Now we're traveling to Holland, and we have, welcome Eveline.
Well, thank you, Morten. It's a pleasure, and Happy New Year to all of you. And I would like to add that let us support the Gustav Mahler Youth Orchestra wherever we can, because it's such a good idea. It's like the foundation.
Yes,
we should put our strength together.
Indeed.
If I can help out.
But now we're talking about you, Eveline. And we're a little pressed for time, but I want to hear, we all want to hear a little bit about your background and how you came to Mahler, and then we'll talk about this wonderful event.
Well, to admit that I did come to Mahler rather late, because I was a fan of Bruckner and of Wagner. And I came to Mahler when I studied the philosophy of Nietzsche. And I found out that there was a very important piece of Nietzsche, which was the Mitternachtlied from Zarathustra. And that inspired me to work on Mahler. So I did not come out of love, but I never fell out of love afterwards. So that's a very short story, but that's how it came to. And then I was invited.
Well.
No, I was invited to join the board of the Mahler Stichting, and that was for me a starting point. And I now look at Louis, because he was my great friend for many, many years in our board. And suddenly I found a destiny in life. I think many of us have this same idea. You fall in love with an idea, with a person, with music, and it never leaves you. And it finalized in this beautiful thing. My crown, my dame crown, it's a very small one. And I'm so happy about it because it tells a lot about how Holland looks at Mahler. I think we discussed some of the questions.
I want to ask, because the crown didn't fall out of the air. I mean, it came because you have done things, Eveline, and you have a very long-standing tradition in the Netherlands, actually, vis-a-vis Mahler, right? I mean, your country has been involved in Mahler ever since he started coming there to conduct and work with Willem Mengelberg.
Yes, well, it started in 1903. And the last concert Mahler conducted was in October 1909 in Amsterdam. But funnily, he has never left us. The heritage feeling of Mahler is it's our composer. I mean, he was, of course, not born in Holland, but every young conductor who wants to earn not the money, but some fame, wants to play Mahler. He is the famous and the favorite of all our orchestras and conductors. And that tells us something about the importance of Mahler in Holland.
Yes, indeed. And you, in a sense, continued that, didn't you? I mean, there have been other great events after Mengelberg, and you were involved in many of these. Tell us a little bit about what you've been doing.
Well, I have started a lot of congresses all around one of the symphonies. We called it around the second or around the eighth or around whatsoever. And that finalized for me when I participated in the organization of the Mahler Fest in '95. So it was the second one. The first one was, of course, in 1920 with Mengelberg. And it should have been the third one last year. We discussed it already. And there I was also a kind of éminence grise. I was the advisor in many aspects. And I think maybe that has given the idea of raising my membership. I was already a normal member of the Oranje Nassau, but now I am a dame. We don't speak about a dame, but it's very nice that in the English-speaking countries I would be a dame, and it's very fabulous.
Yes, indeed. Well, we think it's delightful, of course. I mean, it says a lot about your work and you, but also about your country. I think we have a short film where actually you had no idea what was happening. Can you tell us a little bit about this before we see the film? It's very short, but it's.
Well, I just heard you telling how you fell backwards. What happened to me. I was sitting on the phone, and my husband was telling me the burgomaster is in the corridor, and I said as a joke in Dutch, "There's a horse standing in the corridor." But then actually the burgomaster came in and he said, "I have something to tell you, but afterwards you have to tell me a lot." Well, this surprise moment is in the film.
All right, well, let's have a look.
Mevrouw van der Veen, goedemiddag. Dat was een verrassing volgens mij.
En dan heb ik dat nou te danken.
Ik ga u vertellen dat ik u mag bevorderen. Ik mag u bevorderen tot ridder in de orde van Oranje Nassau. En dan ga ik niet een hele officiële toespraak bij houden.
Ja. Heb jij dat op je geweten?
U krijgt er vast en zeker veel meer straks over te horen wat allemaal...
Man, ja, we mogen niet omhelzen.
Nee, maar ook daar heb ik iets voor bedacht.
Niet beven, hè?
Nee.
Wow!
Wonderful. I think because it really captures your surprise, and of course, who wouldn't be delighted at that? And the closing of this says a lot, also, of course, about being recognized by the Dutch royal family. It's one thing to organize festivals and public events. It's quite another to find recognition by the royal family.
It is, and it feels very special. I feel very honored to be exact. I don't think I deserve it. Everybody says you deserve it. I don't think so. I think everybody working on Mahler and in our board, everybody who is looking now at me, we all work for one big project that is promoting Mahler and bringing people together, especially young ones.
I wonder what would have happened had it not been a time of COVID. Would you have been able to go to the palace? I mean, what would this have looked like if it hadn't been such an extraordinary circumstance?
No, we never go to the palace, but it was presumed to be during the Mahlerfest. That would be, of course, have been a wonderful moment, because Marina would have been there, and many of you, Lou, for instance, everybody would have been in Amsterdam, but COVID prevented. But I was so happy because you saw that my husband was pinning me my medal, and that was a very special moment, because it's so intimate. It tells us something about love. The love I have for my husband, who always gives me the opportunity to join other Mahlerians all over the world. So as I told you, I do love my husband and Mahler.
And they were united in that moment, weren't they? I think we have a photo of the certificate and of you with your with the pin. Maybe we can have a look at that. Here's the certificate. Here's the certificate. And I think the next photo we have you sitting there. There you see, it's pinned on you.
It's the same jacket, you see?
You're not wearing, are you wearing? No, you're not wearing.
No, I'm wearing the small one, because you can only wear the big one when you have a gala, or is there something where the queen is, excuse me, or a king is there, then I can put it on, but you should do it on a dress, a long dress. But this is a small one with a crown on it, and that I can wear.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So tell us why do you think, I mean, it's not that you don't deserve the recognition, but it must say something about, as you were intimating before, the relationship or the respect that the Dutch royal family and maybe society at large has for Mahler and for your work.
Well, if the royal family is so much interested, I don't know. I know that Prince Klaus, the husband, late husband of the Queen, Beatrix, he was very fond of Mahler, and we often met on the front balcony, and he gave me and I said, Royal Highness. But Maxima is the honorary president of the Concertgebouw Orchestra, but they do not very often go to classical concerts. I think it's more the public and all the conductors who want to go to the place where Mahler really grew famous. I mean, Amsterdam was his second homeland, and it felt like that. It still feels like that. If, for instance, you go to a Mahler concert, it will always be sold out. Mm-hmm. Whoever is conducting, we want to hear, we want to eat Mahler, and we are always afterwards. We have a nice meeting with our friends, and we stand as long as the bar is open. We discuss all the different performances we have heard, and of course we have our Mahler news, our regular 4 times a year. And that is also something that brings us together. And I heard that Albrecht was telling us about the numbers of the people joining their society. We have about 220, but we would love, of course, get more. But the difficulty, like for everyone, is how to have youngsters join. Youngsters want to listen, and they want to have a beer, and they want to have a wine. But one of the aims, I think, of the Gustav Mahler Society in Holland is to get more young people working with us. And we had one of our best Mahler master classes was with Christa Ludwig. And it was fantastic to see how she paid honor to the music of Mahler. It was not only Mahler, it was also Strauss, and how the youngsters listened. But there were not many in the audience. And this is something I think we all have to work on, that we get closer to what youth is asking from us.
Well, I can tell you, and I can reassure everyone who is attending today, and many of you will already know this, that our largest demographic on social media are the 18 to 35-year-olds. So you are reaching very many people, young people around the world. And hopefully this will also be an opportunity for the various societies and the events to reach out to that demographic. You are right, that vitality, that interest is also the future. So we're hoping to also make our contribution to that effort. Eveline, it's been delightful talking to you. Thank you.
May I interrupt you for one moment and tell you that we will, Joost is sitting next to me, we hope that we can show our Mahler monologues to you in March. It's almost finished.
Definitely going to be, we are seeing the program. I won't announce it today because I announce 1 month ahead, but I'm looking very much to speaking with you, Joost, very, very soon. About an exciting project that we've already talked about on the Mahler Hour, but we're going to be giving an entire Mahler spotlight to this film project, and we'll be seeing you in a couple of months' time. So thank you again.
And thanks to all of you. Bye-bye.
All right, well, now it's a question of any of you having questions for me or us, anyone on the program. I have a couple of questions that have come in, and maybe we can answer those. Let's see. Alexander, these were questions about the Gustav Mahler Youth Orchestra. How long is the rehearsal period? And then adding the tour. So in other words, how is it blocked in terms of preparation?
Yeah. A normal tour requires about 2 weeks of preparation. So from the moment the musicians arrive, all from their homes or studying places, and join for the first time till the first symphonic concert of the tour program, and normally we have two, it is 2 weeks. That means that we have about 5 to 6 days of mainly, so groups are being coached by professional musicians from Vienna, Berlin, Phil, London Symphony, you know, like that. Then we have an assistant conductor joining in, preparing the orchestra until the arrival of the guest conductor. And this guest conductor then has another 4 or 5 days before the first concert happens. The tour itself then depends on, let's say, the amount of invitations and concerts we are gaining. An average tour has between 8 and 10 concerts. But in comparison to, say, our English fellow professional orchestras, we try not to have concerts every consecutive day, because one of the aspects of Claudio Abbado's vision is also that people have to get to know themselves, their colleagues, and also the places they visit, which makes the whole endeavor also more demanding. But that means that a tour normally comprises at least 4 weeks, sometimes even longer.
Yeah, and of course, when you say tour, you're not necessarily referring to the cities you mentioned earlier. You might go to South America, you might go to different destinations, right? They're not exclusively Europe.
Indeed.
Yeah.
No, indeed.
So I have another question. Both of these are, by the way, from Alejandra Urrutia, writing from Chile. How is the GMJO funded? And of course, that's a question that many are wondering. You talked about it a little bit, but maybe you could just go back to it quickly. You said there were government sources, there were private sources. How do you put together the costs for these tours? Do you have a main sponsor, for instance?
Yeah, first of all, we are a non-profit organization which has tax advantages, so we are tax exempt. That's important. When we gain concert fees, then those are not taxed. It's quite a bit of bureaucratic work, but still, this is the fact. Without that construction, it wouldn't be possible at all. Secondly, and this is an important factor before I give you the real answer, we are not allowed to pay the individual musicians. We are a pedagogical institution, so their contribution is for free, but we cover all costs for them. This is important to know because the costs of a project are mainly, the travels, the full board, the accommodation, the transportation, music hire, material, and so on and so forth. It's not going into fees for the individual musicians. We do pay the guest artist fees, but we are notorious, and I see Martin Kempelweit amongst our guests here in the meeting, we are notorious, I'm sure he will agree, to paying very low fees because it's about the art. It's about music making with talented musicians. We are not a .com. Now, finally answering your question, the main portion of our, let's say, budget, of our funding is concert fees. It is more than 2/3 of our budget comes. We have, as mentioned before, the basic funding mainly from Austria, the Republic of Austria and the city of Vienna, since our foundation, but they altogether make up about 15% of the whole budget. Then we have sponsorship, a very important tradition of main sponsors over the years. We are lucky that we have 2 actual main sponsors, one Austrian bank, the so-called Erste Bank, and one Austrian insurance company, Vienna Insurance Group, for 10 years now, and I keep all fingers crossed that it continues. It continues, and they have shown great support over those difficult last months. And in fact, one of the sponsors anticipated already in autumn that they would engage for the year 21 without knowing what will happen. Then of course we have a great number and a very prominent number of individual donors and supporters, and we are trying to enlarge this most becoming network. I'm repeating my abuse from before, because the basic fact about an institution like this is the following: everybody who takes part in these projects, from the musicians to the tutors to the guest conductors to the public, they realize that Abbado's heritage, perhaps his most important heritage, if I may say, is realized in one particular way. It is about the music making, not only, but very often Mahler, and all the other aspects of our son put aside when it comes to this music making. So we're all like a conjured community, and everybody, wants to contribute to that. And as long as we can, continue this spirit, then also the funding will come. And that's why I have to be optimistic, and I am optimistic, because the projects we are doing in the future, and I didn't mention it before, the next one is, for example, for seeing Mahler 10 in the Cook version with Daniele Gatti now in May at the Mahler Festival in Leipzig. God knows if it will happen, but we have to transport this positive spirit for our musicians.
Yeah. Well, you are a beacon of light, I would say, Alexander, because in these very trying times, it sounds like you've managed to put together a solution for not only surviving, but looking with optimism to the future. I know many people who watch this show are musicians or involved in music making. And I think it's important to keep, as you say, looking forward, keep an optimistic attitude, and know we will emerge from this, and that the world still desperately, even more than ever, needs music.
We have to carry the flame jointly, all of us,
That's right.
All of us.
All right, that's it, I think, in terms of questions. I just want to close by again saying the Mahler Hour is brought to you by Mahler Foundation and contributors around the world. It's a monthly streaming event that you can see on the first Saturday of most months. This is the second Saturday. The idea is to bring together individuals interested in the composer, the thinker, the humanist Gustav Mahler, as we explore not only his life and works, but also how his legacy still informs essential aspects of the human experience, and how we can turn that experience into a force for the good in today's world. Become a member and support our activities. I want to thank our guests, Albrecht Schultze, Ingeborg Stefansson, Alexander Meraviglia-Crivelli, and Dame Eveline Nikkels, as well as our fabulous production team, Francisco Brizio for all the technical support, Monica Angiano for organization, Marco Ayala on our social media platforms. Join us again for our next Mahler Hour on February 6th, 2021, when we will be asking, what do we know about Mahler? I will be talking to experts from the world of Mahler scholarship about what goes into producing the scores, writing about the music, and publishing Mahler's letters. A behind-the-scenes look at what we know and how we know it. Our next Mahler Spotlight is in 2 weeks on January 23rd, when we will be visiting the Portillo International Music Festival and Academy in Chile for a look at how musical masterclasses are integrated into inspiring young people a broader perspective on art, self, and society. That's all for today. Stay safe. See you soon.